Hi everyone, welcome to Gen Recaps. So I just finished watching Outlander Season 6 Episode 2, which is titled Allegiance. And it was a kind of tearjerker, which I didn't cry, but in this episode, Marsali gave birth to her fourth child, Henri Christian, and we see Jamie going through his Indian agent duties and carrying that out with the Cherokee. And we also get to see a little more of the Christies, and there was also a very, very strange funeral, which I was not expecting. This is a detail from the book that if it's from the book, I don't know, that I did not expect to see. But yeah, let's delve into the episode. So one thing I want to talk about before I get into episode 2, I actually am a part of an Outlander group on Facebook, and there were a lot of people talking about Claire's use of ether, and how that was very out of character for her compared to the books. And a lot of people have also come to her defense, saying like the whole thing played out differently in the show and it makes a little more sense for show Claire. And I just kind of wanted to put my 2 cents in. So what I'm going to say is Claire obviously has gone through something very traumatic, as have a lot of the characters on the show. They have all been through a similar situation in different circumstances. When you go through anything like that that's traumatic, you are not going to be in character. You are not going to do what you normally do. Maybe you try. Maybe you seem okay because you put on a brave face, a facade, but you're not yourself when something bad has happened to you. And I'm not speaking for anybody except myself and maybe people that I've known and even just stories that I've read. You do things that are out of character because your mind just isn't functioning because of everything that just keeps playing back in your head. You try to move on, but like she said at the end of the episode, there are always going to be ghosts in your mind, in the back of your head. They are always there no matter how much you try to ignore them, and eventually they can get to you. So when they say that it is out of character for her, I want everyone to think about how Jamie was after what happened to him. He was not himself. And maybe it's more understandable because that was in the book. It was detailed and written in the book, how Jamie responded to that versus how Claire responded to what happened to her. But Jamie did not want to live anymore. He felt he could not continue to be Claire's husband. That was so out of character for him. So I just wanted to come on here and say that anybody who is complaining about Claire using ether, it's not good. I would not recommend it. I do not condone it. But I also at the same time understand why she feels like she needs to do it. So people who say that how people are responding, if you ever call it stupid, then that is not good. That is honestly a problem. Even if you're just talking about a character in a book, somebody might be relating to what Claire is going through and dealing with it in a similar fashion, and to call that response stupid, out of character, might make somebody feel worse about what they're going through too. So if you are any of those people who say something like that, please take a moment to consider what you are writing before you post it, because we do have to be sensitive, because especially after everything that has happened these past 2 years, maybe you guys are even going through something. We all handle trauma differently. Yes, we do. And we have to understand that just because somebody's not responding the way we responded when we went through a similar thing does not make it invalid. So I just wanted to come on here and say that, and I didn't want to make it as long as I did, but I just wanted to get my point across. So thank you so much for listening. Alright, so now in episode 2, we get to see Claire dealing with the Christies some more, because she's actually helping Tom Christie with the healing of his hand. However, his other hand has been horribly disfigured. I forgot exactly if he mentioned how it happened, but she says that she has to perform an operation on it if he wants to be able to use it again. And he actually denies this, saying, like, if it's God's will, then I don't want it to be fixed. She tries to convince him, but he is set in his ways, so she moves on from that. And we see that Malva, so the thing about Malva is she is actually interested in Claire's healing abilities, and she wants to learn all of her techniques. So we start to see her take interest in this episode. However, this is kind of going against her father and her brother's ideas. So she's kind of going against her religion in a sense doing this, but she still goes ahead and does it anyway. She visits Marsali with Claire eventually and she actually starts to learn all the methods of like checking on pregnant women and seeing how their vitals are and everything. And she actually does assist in Marsali's birth later on in the episode. But there's a very curious nature to Malva. She doesn't know a lot of things because of how she's been raised. So Claire is actually kind of beginning to teach her more than just doctor stuff, let's say. So speaking of Marsali, she gives birth to her 4th child, like I mentioned. Unfortunately, it is a very, very difficult birth for her. And we also see that Fergus is still being very distant, and Marsali still has the bruises on her wrist, and when Claire notices that, she asks Malva to step outside, and Marsali finally admits to her that yes, Fergus hurt me, though she claims he was defending himself from her temper, but in this case, it's not good that he hurt her, because she is upset that he is going away at the still all the time, and she doesn't blame him for being away when they were attacked, but he has this notion that he should have been there for them when that happened. And of course, Claire disagrees, like she thinks it wouldn't have made a difference. But Marsali also says that Fergus also wishes that Marsali hadn't been at the surgery doing what she was doing with Claire, and that also kind of sets Claire off. And it's an interesting dynamic seeing the 3 of them navigate their traumas, because they're all dealing with it differently. But the point overall is that Fergus is in a tough spot right now because of the pressure that he's putting on himself, of the guilt that he's putting on himself. And that is why we are seeing him in a drunken state, why he's gone all the time, because being with Marsali is probably a reminder to him that he wasn't there for her. But unfortunately, it is causing a very bad rift in their relationship, and that rift does continue to grow. But amazingly, when Roger is sent to go fetch Fergus when Marsali goes into labor, he actually convinces Fergus to go to her, and he does. And the moment he comes in, it's like he is his old self. He is tender with her, he is gentle with her, and that moment was just, it was sweet, it was beautiful to see, because we don't really get to see the tenderness in the relationship too much, but I'm so glad the writers included that in this episode. Yeah, Marsali, poor Marsali. She's dealing with the fear that she's gonna die, because unfortunately back in those days there was a very high chance women would not make it through pregnancy, and especially with the complications she's having, like Claire's not feeling the baby move for hours, and Marsali's feeling these very intense pains, so she fears that she's gonna die. And one moment that actually really brought tears to my eyes was she's laying in the surgery with Adso, which I'm so glad we saw him again. She's laying with Adso and he's giving her comfort, and she tells the cute little cat, she says, "Adso, if I die, do not let Mistress Fraser perform an autopsy on me." And it's supposed to be her sense of humor, but at the same time, it brought tears to my eyes, because it's, that one line is just this connection that she has with Claire. And we saw in the last episode, or the episode season, that Claire was teaching Marsali about performing autopsies on people to learn how they died and what caused everything to happen. So it's just a little throwback, but at the same time it's like, that's their bond. And it just brought tears to my eyes, because they've come such a far way. And I know this happened in the book, she was always meant to be a mother figure to Marsali, but just to hear Claire even call her her daughter just warms my heart. And it's so sweet. Oh, yeah, this episode definitely gave me the teary eyes. Again, I didn't cry, but I was close at times. But yes. So eventually Marsali gives birth to Henri Christian, and in the books Henri Christian is a dwarf, and this does cause Fergus to basically retreat again. But Marsali, when she holds Henri Christian, she loves him so much, and she does not retreat, she does not reject him, she kisses him and holds him, and I just thought that was beautiful too. However, unfortunately, when we thought Fergus was going to go back to his old self, he's still going to have some issues to deal with. So I mentioned that there was a fun, weird, odd moment. I don't know what to call it, really. There was a funeral in this episode of one of the settlers with Christie's group, and it's this elderly woman who they thought passed away, but while Roger is giving a eulogy at the half-built church, this moment was so weird. So Claire and Jamie brought Germain with them, Fergus and Marsali's eldest son, and he notices, like, this old woman starting to wake up, and I'm watching this thinking, oh, okay, that's what they meant by weird funeral. And so yeah, she wakes up. Claire examines her, and it turns out she's having, I forgot, some kind of ruptured aneurysm, something like that. And she tells everyone that she only has like a few more minutes to live, but because of the internal bleeding that was going on, it basically gave her the appearance and the feel that she was dead. But yeah, this moment was kind of like I don't know if you guys ever have that fear or that thought of like, what happens if you wake up at your own funeral? That was this. It was definitely that. But yeah, she's a little offended by how they I can't talk seriously about the scene. It's supposed to be, I don't know if it's supposed to be comical, but it's a little comical. She's basically like noticing like, this is what you give me when I die? This is how you do my funeral? But yeah, she does eventually like make quick amends with her family, and then she does pass away. But just the fashion in which it happened, I shouldn't laugh, but it was funny. Just because it was unexpected, that's why. But she's also so oddly calm about it. But yeah. Unfortunately, this kind of gives Claire a further reputation, because she was already developing a semi-reputation that she was performing witchcraft because she's a healer, and now this full-on gives her that reputation, and she's technically not allowed back at the church. And basically, what's funny is when Jamie goes to visit Tom at the end when they're still building the church, he tells him that he wants the church to be a meeting place. Like, no religion involved, like, well, religion involved, but it can be for anybody who wants to practice, who wants to meet up there, for all women, men, and children. So Tom seems to agree, which is always unusual, isn't it? But he also tells Tom if anybody else ever accuses Claire of being a witch, there will be heck to pay. And eventually, so there's a whole setup here, but Tom Christie is not happy with Malva for having visited with Claire and having helped her with her medical agendas. And he's about to punish Malva, which she really didn't do anything wrong, but Malva's kind of unfortunately used to this behavior from Tom, and he's about to punish her with the belt, but because his hand is messed up, he can't do it. So this actually prompts him to go to Claire and request to have the operation on his hand, which he says that's for writing and all that, but he really wants to just punish his children, which not a great motivation really, but that's Tom Christie. Anyway, what I loved about this scene, it was a small detail that I noticed. When he goes to Claire, she's sweeping the porch, and I'm thinking, she's holding a broom. And she mentioned something about sharpening her broomstick to Alan Christie earlier in the episode, and I was thinking that is a wonderful detail they added in there. But long story short, Claire says that they cannot do the operation yet because his other hand needs to heal first. But it looks like in coming attractions, she will perform the operation on him. But yeah, we don't want to know how that goes, do we? Yeah, it's gonna take some getting used to, even though there's really gonna be no time to get used to the Christies. As the Indian agent, as they call it, Jamie has to go to the Cherokee And they do request that he speak to the governor about getting them more guns, because they want to be able to protect themselves. And so the whole idea here is that the Crown wants the Native Americans on their side when they fight the Americans, but Jaime knows how this all plays out, and if the Native Americans are on the Crown side, then they're on the losing side, which is not a good situation for the Native Americans. But unfortunately, either way, it's not a good situation, because we unfortunately know how history played out for all of the tribes. And this is what kind of sets Ian off, because the Mohawk were his family for a short time, but a family nonetheless. He actually admits to Marsali at one point that he had a child and he had a wife. He unfortunately lost that family, but he still holds a very strong allegiance to his native family. And eventually, so Jaime does not put in the request that the Cherokee wanted, and they are angry about it, but Jaime does change his mind when he learns this about young Ian, because he knows how strong his allegiance is to the Native Americans, and his own allegiance is strong with Ian. So he does write a letter to the governor to give the Native Americans their request, to give the Cherokee the guns. So basically, he doesn't know how things play out, because even Claire doesn't entirely know what happens, whose side the Native Americans are on entirely. But Jaime develops this philosophy at the end, come what may. And as we know, that is the poster. That is what we have seen season 6 being advertised with, so I like that we see that come into play already. Because as much as Claire understands what happens, her future knowledge isn't enough to understand what happens, because honestly, even if you have the answers, you never fully have the answers. You never have all the details. We still don't. Our knowledge, as much as we have, it's limited, because we never really know how things played out, and we never will. So that is what they are dealing with in this situation. And I like how it parallels when Claire and Jaime in season 2 were trying to stop the Battle of Culloden, but they were unsuccessful. And in this situation, they want to assure that this war happens. As bad as it is, no matter what happens to them, what happens to their family, they have to assure that the future is secure. And that is a lot of pressure. And knowledge can be a burden, especially when you are from the future and in the past. Thank you all for joining me discussing episode 2 of season 6. And please go ahead and comment if you guys have any thoughts on this episode, or if you have any predictions about what's to come. I am very curious to hear, and I would definitely love to chat. But yes, thank you again, Clan fans, for joining me, and I will see you for episode 3. See you next time.